I'm Kala. I'm 32 years old, and at my own sister's wedding, my father called me a disgrace and slapped me across the face in front of 500 people. But before I tell you how that single moment of humiliation led to me methodically and legally dismantling the entire $500,000 event while they all watched in shock, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's a strange thing, what your mind focuses on in a moment of soul-crushing humiliation. It wasn't the sharp sting on my cheek, though that was certainly there. It wasn't the collective, audible gasp that rippled through the opulent ballroom. It was the look in my father's eyes. They were glassy, and it wasn't just from the top-shelf whiskey he'd been downing all evening. It was something deeper, uglier, a simmering resentment that had been festering for over a decade, now boiling to the surface under the ballroom lights. He stood there swaying, his expensive tuxedo suddenly looking like a costume on a very angry man. "You are a disgrace to this family," he slurred, his voice dangerously loud, slicing through the silence. Standing at his shoulder, a silent co-conspirator in this character assassination, was my stepmother, Vanessa. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Her smile was tight, triumphant, her eyes cold. They delivered a single brutal message. This is what you get. This is what you deserve. 500 eyes stared at me. These weren't friends. These were my father's clients, his competitors, the high society friends of my new brother-in-law's obscenely wealthy family, and a few distant relatives I barely recognized. All of them watching the family's dirty laundry being aired for their entertainment. I was the evening's spectacle, the black sheep finally being publicly sheared. For a split second, the wounded 15-year-old girl, buried deep inside me, wanted to scream, cry, defend herself. But years of being the designated family punching bag had forged a different kind of armor. Rule number 1, never let them see you bleed. So I didn't. I straightened my back. I met my father's furious glare without flinching. I held Vanessa's gaze until she, the victor, looked away first. Then, without a single word, I turned my back on both of them and walked out of the ballroom. My heart was thudding against my ribs, but my steps were calm. I walked down a long marble hallway, the murmurs behind me fading. I found a quiet alcove, leaned my shoulder against the cool stone wall, closed my eyes, and tried to breathe. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. That's when I saw him. A young man, maybe 20, in the crisp black uniform of the event staff. He was carefully adjusting a massive floral arrangement, ensuring every petal was perfect. Embroidered on his jacket pocket was a silver swan above the words, "Perfect day planning." And just like that, a wave of something cold and clear washed over me. It extinguished the helpless rage. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't planning, it was instinct, clarity, a message from fate. I pulled out my phone. My fingers, which had been trembling moments before, were steady now. I scrolled through my contacts to a name I trusted with my life. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Kate," I said, my voice calm and even. "It's me. Execute the contingency clause. Article 11, Section B, hostile environment. Shut it down. Shut it all down." To understand why I gave that order so easily, you have to understand something else. The slap at the wedding wasn't the spark. It was the moment the fire that had been burning underground for 17 years finally broke through the surface. The war against me began when I was 15. It began the day my dad, Richard, brought Vanessa home, just 1 year after my mother lost her brutal 2-year battle with cancer. My mom, Clara, wasn't just a person in our house. She was the house. She was the scent of fresh bread on Sunday mornings, the laughter in the halls, the vibrant paintings on the walls. Her presence lingered in the air long after she was gone. A week after Vanessa moved in, with her sleek, minimalist furniture and her cold, assessing eyes, that air turned thin. The house started to feel like a hotel. And we? Just guests. The purge was systematic. It started with little things. My mom's coffee mug, gone. Her gardening gloves, vanished. Then it escalated. One day I came home from school and found 2 large cardboard boxes by the curb. I already knew what was inside. Old newspapers, junk mail, and my mom's photo albums. Her whole life. Our whole life. I pulled out one album. The leather was worn and familiar. Inside, a photo from our last family vacation. My mother with her arms wrapped around a younger, happier version of my father. She was smiling, but the fatigue in her eyes told the real story. I hauled the box back inside. Vanessa stood in the living room directing two workers as they hung a massive piece of abstract art, sharp angles and angry slashes, right where a warm, sunlit portrait of my mom used to be. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "That box is full of my mother's things." Vanessa turned, smiling sweetly, never reaching her eyes. "That old clutter? We're decluttering, Kayla, creating a fresh, modern space. It's about moving forward." "This isn't clutter," I said, louder now. "This is my mother." My dad entered then, drawn by the noise. He saw the box. He saw me. He sighed. "Kala," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Vanessa's right. It's not healthy to dwell on the past." That was the first time he broke my heart. My younger sister, Erin, was just 12 then, desperate for stability and affection. She clung to Vanessa, soaked up the praise and gifts. She didn't see the erasure. Or maybe she just didn't want to. The final break came when it was time for me to go to college. I'd gotten into a top-tier business program at a state university. It was a dream my mom and I had mapped out together. We had college funds. We'd started them when we were kids. I wasn't worried. I was a fool. I remember that conversation like it was burned into my bones. I was sitting in my dad's study, a room that didn't even feel like his anymore. Vanessa had redecorated it into a mausoleum, all black leather and dark mahogany. It felt cold. Final. "Dad," I started, trying to sound casual, "the first tuition payment is due at the end of the month." He didn't even look up from the stock report in front of him. "You're 18, Kala," he said flatly. "It's time you learned to stand on your own 2 feet. A little hard work never hurt anyone." I blinked. "But what about the college fund? Mom's fund?" He finally set the paper down and looked at me. His eyes were distant, cold. "That money was reallocated. We had significant family expenses." A week later, I saw exactly what family expenses meant. Sitting in the driveway, gleaming in the sun, was a brand new fire-engine red Mustang convertible, a high school graduation present for Erin. Her future, Ivy League, fully funded, luxury apartment near campus, and a brand new sports car to top it off. My future, crushed. My mother's legacy, the careful savings she'd built for me, turned into the down payment on my sister's toy. When I brought up inheritance, or even a fair division of what Mom had left, Vanessa had the audacity to laugh. "Oh, honey," she'd said, her voice saccharine and fake, "your mother left behind medical debts. There was nothing to inherit." It was a lie, but it was the one my father chose to believe. That was the moment the lines were drawn. No, carved in stone. There was Erin, the golden child, and there was me, the inconvenient reminder of a life they wanted to forget. So I did what I had to do. I stood on my own 2 feet. I took out every student loan I could. I got a job waiting tables at a 24-hour diner. The smell of grease clung to my skin long after my shifts ended at 2 a.m. I picked up another job stocking grocery shelves. My alarm went off at 5 a.m. so I could finish before my first class. In the few hours between, I did freelance graphic design online, logos, branding, whatever I could get. $5 an hour until my eyes burned. My life became a blur of exhaustion, cheap coffee, and instant ramen. My roommate, Tyler, a tall, brilliant engineering student who lived on caffeine and optimism, was my sole witness. He'd see me stumble in, collapse face first into bed, too tired to even take off my shoes. He was also my first believer. We'd sit in our shoebox-sized dorm room and I'd ramble on about this crazy idea for a company. "It's not just parties," I'd say, sketching ideas on a pizza box. "It's logistics. It's psychology. It's chaos management. It's about turning disaster into a flawless moment. It's science." Tyler would grin. "You talk about this stuff the way I talk about quantum physics. You have to do this." He became my sounding board, my partner, my brother in everything but blood. My second believer came in the form of Professor Alistair Winters. He taught my senior business strategy class. He was terrifying, brilliant, the kind of man who'd built 2 tech companies before deciding teaching was more fun. He was ruthless in critique, but fair. For our final project, I turned in a 100-page business plan for a boutique event company, Elite Events. A week later, he called me into his office. The room smelled like leather, old books, and power. "Kala," he said, tossing the paper onto his desk, red ink everywhere. "This is more than just a good grade. This is a viable business. But more than that," he leaned forward, eyes sharp, "you have something most students don't. Grit, hunger, the kind that comes from having to fight for every scrap. Talent is common. Grit is rare." Then he picked up the phone. "I'm sending a young woman your way," he said to someone on the other end. "Her name is Kayla. Hire her for your next event. Trust me." He hung up and looked at me. "Don't make me look stupid." That phone call was the beginning of everything. He validated a dream my own father treated like a childish fantasy. Sophia, my ex-boyfriend, was another casualty of that dream. He was kind, funny, and deserved more than someone constantly stressed and half awake. "I can't do this anymore, Kayla," he said one night, eyes glassy with resignation. "I love you, but I'm tired of being second to a business plan." I didn't argue. He was right. Losing him was just one more price I paid for the life I was building. The final clean break from my family came that Thanksgiving. I was 22, just months from graduating. I drove 6 hours home in my sputtering Honda, hoping, stupidly, that maybe things had changed. They hadn't. At the dinner table, my Uncle James asked what I planned to do after graduation. Before I could answer, Vanessa cut in, her voice syrupy and condescending. "Oh, Kayla's starting her little party business. Isn't that just quaint?" Erin, now a smug sophomore at her Ivy League school, snickered. "Yeah, you doing balloon animals for kids now, sis?" The table chuckled. Heat climbed up my neck. I looked to my dad, silently pleading. "Say something. Defend me." He just stared at the turkey he was carving like it held the secrets of the universe. His silence was louder than any insult. "At least I'm building something myself," I said through clenched teeth. "I'm not having it all handed to me." The jab hit. Erin flushed. My dad's head snapped up. "That's enough, Kayla," he said. "Don't come into my house and insult your sister. Don't ruin this holiday for everyone. My house, not our house." The words hung in the air like a final sentence. I placed my napkin on the table, slowly stood. "You're right," I said, scanning their faces. My grandmother, Eleanor, looked heartbroken. Uncle James studied his plate like it might save him. Everyone else avoided my eyes. "I won't ruin your holiday." I walked out, got in my car, drove 6 hours back to my apartment, the sound of their laughter still echoing in my head. That night, I made a vow. I would build a life so solid, so undeniable, that they could never touch it. I would never ask them for a single thing, and I would never, ever look back. I didn't know it then, but I had just closed a door that would stay shut for 7 long, hard, transformative years. Those 7 years were a grind, but it was a righteous grind. Every dollar I made, every minute I had, every drop of energy, I poured into elite events. Tyler, true to his word, cashed in savings bonds his grandfather had left him. He became my first official partner. For 2 years, our tiny apartment was HQ. The living room was our boardroom, the kitchen table, our conference center. We were fueled by discount coffee and the sheer will to prove everyone wrong. And it started to work. The 2 small corporate gigs Professor Winters had tossed my way? Nailed. Word of mouth started to spread. We weren't the cheapest, but we were the best. Obsessive about details, calm in a crisis, committed to making every event feel like magic. Eventually, we moved into a small, windowless office we nicknamed the Shoebox. A year later, we moved again, to a real office with windows and a receptionist. That's when I hired Kate. Sharp, loyal, ex-military, unflappable. She became my operations manager, my right hand, the machinery behind the scenes while I focused on growth. And we grew. Tech product launches, million-dollar galas, high society weddings. I was no longer that girl with the little party business. I was a player. One of my key strategies, targeted acquisition. I didn't want to just grow, I wanted to absorb the competition. About a year before Erin's wedding, one company caught my attention. Perfect Day Planning. They were mid-tier, known for undercutting prices. Reputation was shaky, but they had a huge client list. I called a meeting with Kate and Tyler. "Here's the plan," I said, pointing at the financial breakdown projected on the wall. "They're leveraged to the teeth. Their cash flow's a mess. I'm going to make their owner an offer he can't refuse." Kate studied the numbers. "It's aggressive," she said, "but it's smart. We gut them from the inside out." Tyler grinned. "It's a Trojan horse." The deal was done quietly a month later. Elite Events became the silent parent company of Perfect Day Planning. It was a strategic move, clean, calculated. What I didn't realize was that my Trojan horse would one day be wheeled into the heart of my own family's battlefield. In the midst of all that, something unexpected happened. I reconnected with Jessica. We'd known each other in high school. She'd recently moved back to the city and was thriving as an architect. She was a breath of fresh air, grounded, funny, brilliant. She understood ambition. She saw the scars, but she didn't treat me like a victim. She saw me as a survivor. She became my partner, my peace, my chosen family. We got engaged on the anniversary of the day I started Elite Events. Then, after 7 years of radio silence, a thick, cream-colored envelope arrived at my office. It was addressed in Vanessa's elegant, looping handwriting, an invitation to the wedding of Aaron and Oliver Ashford. The Ashfords were practically local royalty, old money, manufacturing empire. This wasn't a wedding, it was a merger. Inside, tucked on a smaller card, was a handwritten note in Aaron's messy, rushed script. Calla, I know it's been too long. Things got complicated. I miss you. I'd really love to have you there. Please, let's fix this. I stared at it for a long time. A bitter laugh escaped me. 7 years. No call. No birthday message. No Merry Christmas. But now? Let's fix this. Jessica read the note over my shoulder. She was quiet. What do you think? She finally asked. I think it's Vanessa, I said, tossing the card on my desk. The Ashfords are all about image. They can't have the bride's sister be MIA. It'd look bad. This isn't a gesture, it's PR. Or, Jessica said softly, sliding her hand into mine, maybe it's a chance, not for them, for you, to see them for who they are and finally close the door on your terms. Her words hit something deep. Rationally, I knew it was a trap. But a part of me, some small, foolish part that still remembered sleepovers and secret talks with my little sister, wanted to believe it. On a hunch, I did some digging. I called a contact at the Ashfords' favorite venue, the notoriously exclusive Oak Haven Country Club. Who's handling event planning for the Ashford wedding? I asked casually. Oh, a company called Perfect Day Planning, the contact replied. New partner for us. Came highly recommended by the bride's mother. The world seemed to freeze for a beat. Perfect Day Planning. My Trojan horse. It was almost poetic. I decided to test the waters. I called Aaron. Hey, I said, forcing a warmth I didn't feel into my voice. Got the invitation. Congrats. Listen, I know it's last minute, but my company, Elite Events, has a great relationship with Oak Haven. I could probably save you a ton, maybe even get you upgrades. My treat. There was a pause. Wow, that's generous, Aaron said slowly. But Vanessa's already been working with this amazing company, Perfect Day Planning. She's been on it for months. You know how she is. Oh, I know exactly how she is. No problem, I said smoothly. Just wanted to offer. See you there. I hung up and looked at Jessica. I'm going. Are you sure? She asked gently. I have to. I looked at the invitation again, at Aaron's note. Closure, maybe even reconciliation. And then I thought about Perfect Day Planning. My silent weapon, already inside their walls. This wasn't a wedding. This was a chessboard. And they had no idea I already owned the pieces. I opened my closet and pulled out my finest suit. A custom-tailored piece of armor in deep charcoal gray. I wasn't walking into that ballroom as the black sheep. I was walking in as the wolf they never saw coming. The Oak Haven Country Club wasn't just a venue, it was a statement. It sprawled across 100 acres of manicured perfection, old money elegance, prestige soaked into every stone. As I handed my car keys to the valet, I could already see my team's fingerprints everywhere. The elegant floral arches, the perfectly aligned signage, the seamless guest flow. It was an Elite Events production in everything but name. Jessica squeezed my hand as we walked up the stone steps. Deep breaths, she whispered. I'm fine, I said. It was a lie. My pulse was pounding, my throat dry. Walking into that ballroom felt like stepping into a cage, facing a lion who used to tuck you into bed. The ballroom itself was breathtaking. 2-story ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the sunset, thousands of white roses and peonies floated in midair from towering arrangements. And for a fleeting second, I felt it. Pride. I did this, and my team did this. This flawless moment was something I built out of nothing. And then Erin spotted me. Her face lit up. She rushed over and threw her arms around me. Calla, you came, she whispered. It means so much. For one stupid, vulnerable moment, I believed it. Maybe Jessica was right. Maybe this was real. Then, like a shadow in satin, Vanessa appeared. She slid up beside Erin like smoke. Darling, she said sweetly, ignoring me completely. Olivia's parents are waiting. Come say hello. She looped her arm through Erin's and guided her away. No acknowledgement, no hello, not even a glance in my direction. That bubble of hope popped. I was reminded this wasn't family, this was theater, and I was just a prop. Finding our table was a slow-motion humiliation. A smiling hostess walked us past the main tables, past the family section, past the high-roller guests, past even the second-tier friends. We landed in the farthest corner of the ballroom, next to the kitchen doors, next to a rattling speaker. A little white card on the table read, Calla and guest. Our table mates? A great aunt who smelled like mothballs and couldn't hear. A third cousin I barely remembered, who had been kicked off a reality show a decade ago and was already slurring his words. We weren't guests. We were a holding pen. The invisible relatives. Across the room, I had a clear view of the head table. My father was holding court, laughing too loudly. Vanessa was glowing, taking credit for every detail of the event. Erin and her groom, perfect regal, like a prom queen and king. I tried to meet Uncle James's eyes. He looked at me. For a moment, I thought I saw something. Regret? Shame? Then he turned back to his dinner companion and nodded at something she said about Tuscany. A few minutes later, I spotted my grandmother scanning the room. Her eyes found me and she smiled, started to lift her hand. And then Vanessa leaned in and whispered something to her. I watched the smile vanish from my grandmother's face. Her hand dropped. She sank back into her seat. It was a masterclass in social cruelty. They hadn't banned me. That would have been obvious. They'd done worse. They had invited me just to exclude me, with surgical precision. They made me visible enough to shame, but invisible enough to dismiss. Jessica, bless her heart, was the picture of grace. She complimented Great Aunt Muriel's brooch, nodded along to the cousins' half-coherent stories, but I could feel her protective rage radiating beside me. Every so often, she'd glance over, eyes asking, "Say the word. We'll leave." But I couldn't move. Leaving felt like surrender. Staying felt like slow death. Dinner was served. It was exquisite, the plating flawless, the service seamless. My team, my perfect day team, was executing this with military-level precision. And with every course, every passed glass of champagne, I felt the screw turn tighter in my chest. This perfection, this was mine, and they didn't even know. As the dinner plates were cleared, my eyes drifted to a nearby table. A father was leaning in to whisper something to his two grown daughters. They laughed. The mother rolled her eyes and swatted his arm, smiling. It was so simple, so pure, and I would never have it. I would never know what it felt like to be safe with my own father. I leaned over to Jessica. "You know what?" I whispered. "Let's just slip out after they cut the cake. No goodbyes. Just disappear." Relief softened her features. "Whatever you want, Kayla." I exhaled. The decision felt like a release. No drama, no confrontation. They wouldn't get my anger. They wouldn't get my pain. They'd get something worse, my absence. But fate had other plans, because that's when I saw him. My father, walking straight toward our table. His face was flushed from liquor and rage. The eye of the storm had found me. There was no escape now. My father stopped directly in front of our table, planting his feet wide like he was bracing for impact. He swayed slightly. His jaw was tight, his eyes bloodshot and locked on mine like a loaded weapon. The conversations around us faltered, then died completely. Silence spread through our corner of the room like smoke. He didn't acknowledge Jessica. He didn't acknowledge anyone. He just stared at me. "Well, well," he slurred, loud enough for half the ballroom to hear. "Look what we have here. The prodigal daughter gracing us with her presence." I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I kept my hands folded neatly on the table. "Hello, Dad," I said, my voice calm, even. "Don't you hello, Dad, me." He jabbed a thick finger in my direction. "You don't have the right." His voice was growing louder, more unhinged by the second. "What are you even doing here? You think a pathetic little note from your sister makes up for 7 years of silence? Of disrespect?" I didn't reply. I didn't give him the satisfaction. My silence seemed to enrage him more than any insult could have. "I gave you everything," he shouted. "A name, a roof, an education. And what did you do? You threw it all away. You walked out on this family. For what? Your little party business?" Vanessa arrived just then, floating to his side like a ghost in couture. She placed a gentle, performative hand on his arm. "Richard," she said softly, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "don't. He's not worth it. People are watching." It was a perfect move. She looked like the reasonable one, while validating his rage. "Let them watch," he bellowed, brushing her off. "Let them see what an ungrateful, arrogant disgrace she is." He turned back to me. 7 years. Not a single phone call. And now you show up here in your fancy suit pretending like you're still part of this family? I finally spoke. My suit's not rented, I said quietly, deliberately. Vanessa laughed, sharp, mocking. Oh, please, Calla, don't be ridiculous, as if your little company could afford a suit from Savile Row. You're just here to make a scene. You're jealous, you always have been, jealous of Erin's success, and now you're trying to ruin her big day. That was it. That was the line. I wasn't the one making a scene. I wasn't the one out here, drunk, yelling, making a public spectacle in front of 500 people. I wasn't the one ruining anything. But the worst part? The look on my sister's face, frozen nearby. Not horror, not anger, just embarrassment. Embarrassment that this was happening at her wedding. Not that it was happening to me. My father stepped closer, his face twisted into something primal. You are a disgrace to this family, he spat. And then he did it. He drew back his hand and slapped me across the face. The sound cracked through the ballroom like a gunshot. A collective gasp, 500 people inhaling at once. My head snapped sideways. My cheek flared with hot, immediate pain. But it wasn't the sting that broke me. It was the confirmation. There, in front of everyone, my father had done what I'd always feared he was capable of. Not just metaphorically, not just emotionally, but physically, openly, publicly. The string quartet stopped mid-note. Waitstaff froze mid-pour. Silence swallowed everything. I slowly turned back to face him. I looked into the eyes of the man who was supposed to protect me, lift me, love me. There was no sorrow there, no regret, just contempt. And beside him, Vanessa smiled. The victor, smug, cold, unapologetic. I turned to Erin, my own sister. She didn't move, didn't speak. Just stood there, frozen, ashamed, not for me, but of me. Jessica stood up beside me, her hand wrapping around mine, her fingers warm and steady. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I looked at them all, one final time. Then I turned my back and I walked away. Behind me, my father roared after me, "That's right, walk away! Run like you always do, you coward!" But I wasn't running. I was choosing. I walked down the long marble hallway, my cheek throbbing, my mind calm in a terrifying, unshakable way. At the alcove, I stopped. And there he was again. The same young man in the black perfect day planning uniform, still adjusting the floral centerpiece, still doing his job. That's when it hit me, all of it. The acquisition, the contracts, the clause. My team, my company. Everything clicked into place. This wasn't a plan I had made tonight. It was a weapon I had built over years. And my father had just handed me the perfect reason to use it. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Kate picked up instantly. "Kate," I said, voice low and controlled. "It's me." "Execute the contingency clause. Article 11, Section B, hostile environment." There was a beat of silence on her end. "Calla," she said slowly, "are you sure? This is a 500-person event. The client is your—" "The client's agent just physically assaulted the company owner," I said. "The environment is hostile. The contract is void." Another pause. Then Kate's voice hardened. "Understood, we're on it. Initiating shutdown protocols now." I hung up. Jessica was at my side, her eyes wide with shock and fierce pride. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the music didn't fade. It cut. A sudden electronic squawk, jarring, harsh. The golden, romantic lighting vanished, replaced by the fluorescent glare of the building's standard lights. And just like that, the takedown began. It wasn't chaos. It was choreography. A silent, ruthless ballet of precision. David, my lead coordinator, whom I had trained personally, spoke calmly into his headset. 4 staff members moved to the head table and began dismantling the elaborate floral displays, carefully placing the expensive blooms into transport boxes. Another team rolled up the custom-installed white dance floor with swift practice movements. Bartenders began sealing the top-shelf liquor under black tarps, locking the cabinets. The towering wedding cake, 5 tiers of sugar, and ego, was wheeled off the floor and toward the service exit. Guests rose from their seats, whispering, watching, confused, curious, anxious. Then Vanessa spotted Kate. Kate, calm as ever, was standing near the main stage, clipboard in hand, overseeing the operation. Vanessa stormed over like a queen enraged. "What in God's name do you think you're doing?" she shrieked. "Stop this! I will ruin you! I will see this company blacklisted." Kate turned to her, professional and stone-faced. "Ma'am," she said, voice measured and clear, "per the terms of your signed contract, our services are terminated, effective immediately, due to a hostile and unsafe work environment. If you wish to pursue the matter, you'll need to contact the company owner directly." "Then get her out here!" Vanessa screamed. Her voice cracked. She was losing control. "I want to speak to whoever runs this circus. I want her in front of me. Now." That was my cue. I stepped out of the shadows and walked slowly into the half-dismantled room. Eyes followed me. Conversation stopped. The drama had a new act, and I was center stage. I stopped a few feet from Vanessa, who turned and went rigid when she saw me. "You wanted to see me?" I said calmly. Her mouth fell open. For a moment, she looked like a fish gasping for air. "You wanted the perfect wedding," I continued, my voice steady, carrying across the fluorescent-lit ballroom. "So you hired the best. Congratulations, Vanessa. You did." I let the silence stretch. "The company you hired, Perfect Day Planning, is a subsidiary of Elite Events." I paused, let the words sink in. "Elite Events is mine." Her face went pale, her hands clenched. I turned to face my father, who had joined her, and Erin, who now stood frozen between them, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You took my mother's memory," I said, my voice cold and clear. "You took my college fund. You took my place in this family, and tonight you tried to make my dignity." I pulled a thick, elegant business card from my suit pocket and held it out to my father. He hesitated. His hand trembled slightly as he took it. "For any damages you believe you're owed," I said, "send the bill to my attorney. She'll also be contacting you about my claims for assault and defamation." I didn't shout. I didn't need to. The truth echoed loud enough. Then I turned, took Jessica's hand, and together we walked out of that ballroom, leaving behind the shattered remnants of their perfect illusion. We didn't look back. Vanessa's incoherent screeching faded into the background. So did the whispers, the shocked murmurs, the frantic movement. The only sound that mattered was the quiet hum of the car engine as we pulled away into the night. It wasn't the sound of escape. It was the sound of liberation. The drive home was silent. Jessica didn't say anything. She didn't need to. She just reached over and took my hand in hers, strong, warm, steady. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, again and again. Buzz, Richard. Text full of threats and curses. Buzz, unknown number. Likely one of Vanessa's socialite allies. Buzz, Erin. How could you do this to me? You ruined my wedding. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A relentless choir of blame. I let it ring. I let it buzz itself into oblivion. When we walked into the stillness of our apartment, I picked up the phone, stared at the angry little screen, and pressed the power button. Dark. Silent. I placed it on the counter like it no longer belonged to me. And in that silence, I felt the first breath of peace I'd had in 17 years. Jessica wrapped her arms around my waist and rested her head against my back. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. Simple words, fierce sincerity. They almost undid me. I turned around and just held her, my face buried in her hair, finally letting out the breath I didn't even know I'd been holding for over half my life. The next few days were the calm before the legal storm. The story of the wedding that wasn't tore through their social circle like wildfire. Vanessa, as predictable as ever, launched her scorched earth smear campaign. She and her inner circle of wealthy allies blitzed Yelp, Google, and every wedding forum they could find with venomous one-star reviews. They accused us of being unprofessional, of abandoning our duties, of ruining Erin's most important day. It was a coordinated lie. And it was also useless, because then came the official blow. A thick envelope arrived at my office via courier. The law firm's name was embossed in gold, one I didn't recognize, clearly expensive, clearly angry. Inside was a letter, dense with legal jargon, but the message was simple. Richard and Vanessa were suing me. Personally, professionally. They were suing Elite Events and Perfect Day Planning. They weren't just going after breach of contract. They were throwing everything they could into the mix. Intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, reputational harm, interference with a private family event. Richard had hired one of his golfing buddies, a well-known legal bulldog who had a reputation for courtroom intimidation and legal harassment. It was the same old playbook. Bury the opposition in paperwork, bully them into silence, crush them under the weight of expensive litigation. But they didn't know me anymore. They still thought I was that exhausted, scared 18-year-old girl begging for tuition money. They had no idea who they were dealing with now. I scanned the document and forwarded it immediately to my attorney, Cassandra. She wasn't a bulldog. She was a shark. The best corporate litigator in the city, and my attorney of record for the past 5 years. I'd hired her after a former business partner tried to cheat me out of a licensing deal. She tore his case apart in 5 days flat. Her response came within hours. A short, confident email. I've reviewed their claim. It's legally baseless, professionally embarrassing, and structurally hollow. Do not respond. Do not contact them. Forward all communication to me. I'll be in touch. A week passed. I buried myself in work, trying not to feel the storm circling on the horizon. And then Cassandra called. Her voice was calm, but there was something gleaming just beneath it. Satisfaction. I sent our response package to opposing counsel this morning, she said. What was in it? I asked. 3 items, she replied. First, a high-definition, time-stamped video of the ballroom security footage. It clearly shows Richard initiating a verbal confrontation and physically assaulting you. I closed my eyes. I could still feel the sting on my cheek. Second, a full copy of the signed service contract with Article 11, Section B highlighted in yellow. The hostile work environment clause. I smiled. And third, a binder of sworn affidavits from 3 of your employees who witnessed the assault, plus screenshots of the defamatory online reviews from Vanessa and her associates. I exhaled slowly. And? I also included a draft of our countersuit, she said. Assault, battery, defamation, tortious interference with business. She paused. I informed them that if their frivolous lawsuit wasn't withdrawn within 24 hours, we would be filing. And? I whispered. She let out a quiet, delighted sigh. The bulldog called me an hour ago. He tripped over himself trying to apologize. They're withdrawing everything, effective immediately. I let the phone fall into my lap. The relief wasn't subtle. It was a physical sensation, like I'd been carrying a boulder on my chest for 17 years, and someone had finally lifted it off. It was over. The threat, the smear campaign, the legal games. Done. But the personal fallout, that was only beginning. A few days after the lawsuit disappeared, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Kala? The voice was cautious, riddled with shame. It was my Uncle James. What do you want? I asked, my voice flat. There was a long silence. Then, I wanted to apologize. My breath caught. I was there that night, he continued. I saw what he did. I saw what they've been doing to you for years, and I said nothing. I just sat there, swirling wine like it might change reality. He paused, his voice cracked. I was a coward, a damn coward. He exhaled shakily. But seeing you stand up, seeing you walk away without flinching, that changed something in me. I'm sorry, Kayla. I am so sorry. It was the first real apology I had ever received from that family. It didn't heal the wounds, but it cracked something open, something long frozen. It was a beginning, but the most unexpected fallout was professional, because the story got out. Not Vanessa's twisted version, the real story. Several CEOs and public figures who had attended the wedding, they saw it all. They saw the slap, the calm, the shutdown. They saw me. Not a problem. Not a drama queen. A professional who kept her dignity under pressure. My phone didn't stop ringing for 2 weeks. Ms. Kayla, a voice said on one call. I recognized the name. CEO of a tech firm. I was at the Ashford wedding. I've never seen an event shutdown handled with that kind of control. I need to lead events for our next shareholder summit, no one else. And then another call. And another. Vanessa's campaign to destroy my business? It backfired in the most spectacular way possible. What she'd intended as a smear became the single greatest PR push of my career. In the corporate world, no one wanted a planner who cracked under pressure. They wanted me, the woman who got slapped by her father in a ballroom full of strangers and walked away like a queen. The woman who didn't break. 6 months after the wedding, the city thawed from a long, bitter winter. The air was soft again. Light spilled through the windows. Trees bloomed. Everything felt new. Elite Events was soaring. We'd landed 3 of our biggest contracts to date, all directly tied to that so-called wedding disaster. My reputation wasn't just intact, it was bulletproof, forged in fire, hardened by truth. But the most important change, it wasn't in my calendar or my bank account. It was in my mind. The constant hum of anger and grief that had underscored my life for 17 years, gone. In its place was a stillness, a steady, quiet peace. I wasn't waiting for the next insult or attack. I wasn't bracing for the next wave of disappointment. I was free. My chosen family was thriving. Tyler and his wife welcomed their first baby, Lily. She gurgled in my arms when I visited the hospital. I was named godmother. Holding that tiny, trusting life lit something inside me I didn't even know had dimmed. Kate, my right hand, my battle partner, was made full partner at elite events. Her name now hung beside mine and Tyler's on the office door. It belonged there. And Jessica, my light, my home, was still by my side. She had seen every broken piece of me, never tried to fix them, just loved them, fiercely, proudly. One crisp spring evening, we walked through the park beneath a sky awash in orange and lavender. I stopped under a massive oak tree and turned to her. "Jessica," I said, voice catching, "you walked into my storm and never ran. You didn't try to silence the thunder, you just held my hand and waited for the sun." I pulled the small velvet box from my pocket and dropped to one knee. Her eyes welled with tears as I asked her to marry me. Her yes was soft, certain, home. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was building. And then, just as I felt the door to my past finally click shut, a text message. It's Erin. Can we talk, please?" I stared at it. My thumb hovered over block. But Jessica, with her infinite grace, placed a hand on mine. "Maybe you should hear her out," she said gently. "Not for her, for you. So there are no more what ifs, so you can close the door all the way." I agreed to meet Erin in a quiet cafe downtown. She was already there when I arrived, hunched over a cup of coffee, wringing her hands. The girl I saw, she wasn't the golden child anymore. She looked small, tired, lost. But the words that came out of her mouth? Not remorse, not apology, but accusation. "You ruined my life, Calla," she hissed. "Olivia's family called off the wedding. Her dad pulled the job offer. I lost everything. Because you had to make a scene." I blinked at her. Something inside me didn't even flinch. "Erin," I said softly, "I didn't ruin your life. They did. You built your future on their approval, their money, their lies. I didn't knock your life over. I just refused to lie under it when it collapsed." She looked away, blinking hard. "But we were sisters," she whispered. "Were we?" I asked. "When they threw out Mom's photo albums? When they stole my college fund to buy you a car? When Dad hit me in front of 500 people and you stood there doing nothing? Were we sisters then?" Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't argue, because there was nothing left to say. "You're not the villain in your story," I told her, "but you're not the victim either. And if you want a future that's real, you'll have to build it, just like I did, from scratch." I stood. That was the last time I ever saw my sister. And as I stepped out into the golden light of afternoon, I felt the last chain snap. I wasn't just free of their control. I was free of their narrative, their apology, their validation, their understanding. I didn't need any of it. I had my own. That night, Jessica and I sat on the floor of our apartment with takeout and a bottle of wine, sketching wedding plans on napkins. We weren't planning some extravagant spectacle. We were building something real, a celebration of love, of survival, of truth. And the first celebration came sooner than expected. My grandmother Eleanor's 75th birthday. We hosted it in her sunlit apartment, overlooking the park. It wasn't glamorous, but it was perfect. Just family. The real kind. Me and Jessica, Tyler and his wife, baby Lily banging a spoon on the table, Kate toasting with sparkling cider, Uncle James telling a terrible fishing story that made Eleanor laugh so hard she had to dab her eyes. There was no talk of Richard. No mention of Vanessa. Their names felt like dust now. Irrelevant. Forgotten. We talked about Lily's first tooth, Jessica's new building design, Eleanor's plan to join a competitive bridge club. We talked about now. Later that night, Jessica and I stood on the balcony, city lights glittering below. "Are you happy?" she asked, resting her head on my shoulder. I thought of everything. The 15-year-old girl, rescuing her mother's memories from a trash pile. The 18-year-old waitress clawing through double shifts to afford tuition. The woman who stood still while her father struck her in public and refused to break. And I thought of this moment. Of her. Of peace. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," I said. Because for the first time in my life, I was whole. Family isn't blood. It's not obligation, or last names, or who shares your genes. It's who shows up. It's who stays. It's who chooses you, even on your worst day. And after years of fighting for a seat at a table where I was never truly wanted, I finally stopped begging. I built my own, and my table is full of love, of laughter, of life. Standing up for myself that night wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was the moment I decided I was worth it. And I've never looked back.